All right, so this is presentation for Malloy Chapter 3 and Dabbs and Howard introduction, the super long, dry introduction for tonight's lecture. I guess it's not a lecture, I guess it's just a presentation. But before I get started, I just want to acknowledge what technologies I am using. So to present this information, I am using Google Docs, as you probably just saw, and then to talk about the info, how you're hearing my voice right now is through QuickTime Player. I'm recording my screen and also turn on my audio so you can hear what I'm saying. This can be really awesome to use for for flipped classroom, for example, if you want to record yourself doing a lesson so that students can watch it the night before and take notes or interact with it or whatever, or if if you're going to be absent a day and you don't want to rely on the subs' abilities to deliver a lesson. So that this is kind of a cool technique. So let's start with Dabbs and Howard. It was only about 3 pages. It was the intro, and it essentially overviews the entire book, as an introduction should do. It went through each of the chapters, and I think probably the most important chapters that, or the ones that I guess I'm really going to focus on, I don't want to make an assumption for everyone, are chapters 3 and 4. So building those connections in your classroom, making connections from the resources you're using to the students, and then the students to the material, and making those connections using technology and online sources, and then also making connections for your planning as a teacher. Essentially, what they talked about was the students, or the teachers have, I think they said you're not on an island, right? So you have these online resources, and it may be helpful to connect with them so that you can make sure that your lesson plans are the absolute best for your students. So that's kind of the overview of the book. It seems the goal of this book is to empower new teachers by giving them tools to ask for help, making informed decisions, create meaningful lesson plans, and connect to the most important stakeholders in education, which are the students, of course. Even in the intro, this quote appeared twice. It said, "A classroom built only by the teacher is only for the teacher." And I just thought this was really powerful, and I hope that this book refers back to this quote frequently, because this is so true. If you're using a technology source that you chose because you love it, it may not be the best for the students. And that's something to be aware of. So if you create a Kahoot and you're like, this is the best Kahoot ever, but your students aren't really connected to it, then maybe a Kahoot isn't the best option for your classroom. So I thought that was really, really neat. Okay, jumping to Malloy, Chapter 3, Transforming Learning with Unique, Powerful Technology. Before I jump into it, though, quick note, my book is the 2nd edition. Dr. Albert, I know you use the 3rd edition, as I found out on Monday night, which is totally fine. There aren't really big, major gaps between the 2 editions. However, that being said, if I go through these concepts and I miss anything, Dr. Albert, feel free to jump in on that blog post and include any content that I missed, or anybody else that has a 3rd edition versus the 2nd edition, okay? So Chapter 3 covers 6, really 5 main concepts to create a unique, powerful, transformative learning experience, right? So it starts off with going, really scratching the surface, research on science of learning, and then jumps into the 5 contributing goals, concepts, ideas, if you will, how technology promotes critical thinking and problem solving, the meaning and importance of new digital literacies, how technology facilitates communication and collaboration, how technology enables multiple expressions of creative thinking, and the meaning and importance of digital citizenship. Now, I'm going to try to fly through these as best as possible in order to stay within a 20-minute time gap for this lesson. So these types of, if you're following along with your textbook in Figure 3.1, it has a nice little, I guess it's not a chart, but a graphic that basically shows how using a unique, powerful, and transformative learning method contributes to all 5 of these concepts, all 5 of these goals, right? Especially when using technology. So let's start with the first one, science of learning, research on science of learning. Regardless of what learning theory you prefer, there is a general consensus in the scientific community that emphasizes active student engagement, also referred to in the book as active learning, and a focus on metacognitive thinking to establish a student-centered approach to teaching. And this is really where we should be headed in education if we haven't made moves in that direction already. So this section talks about 4 different learning theories: behaviorism, cognitivism, constructivism, and constructionism. 2 differences there. It also addresses the terms of, like I said, active learning, also known as active student engagement, in which we'll talk about active learning a little bit because it comes up in another section. And metacognitive thinking, which, if you're not familiar with the idea, is essentially the idea that students are aware of their learning processes, and it calls for reflection on their learning to improve overall performance. This section also briefly touches on the NETS standards for students and the 21st century student outcomes, which we talked about on Monday night, so I'm not going to go into those. And if you are not familiar with the 4 learning theories, I have included those in the blog as well, in the blog post, so you do have quick access to those. But for sake of time, I think we'll just kind of move forward. But again, general consensus is, regardless of the theory, there should be an emphasis and focus on active learning and metacognitive thinking for education to be successful. So this was in the first little section that talked about research on science of learning, and it says, humans from the youngest infants to adults of all ages are goal-oriented agents who actively seek information. And I thought this was so important to recognize, because it's essentially saying, again, regardless of what theory you prefer, if you prefer one, humans inherently seek out knowledge. We are constantly looking for information and constantly learning things, whether or not we're aware of it, right? Whether or not we're accessing this information or learning this information, rather, in a metacognitive way. But this is how we operate. This is how we function as humans. Our brains are seeking out information. And as teachers, it is so important for us to really connect with our students and figure out how they seek information best, and then align those goals and those strategies with what we're doing in the classroom. So, short quote, but I think super powerful. All right, using technology to think critically and problem solve. This was the first, goal, concept, whatever you want to call it. So one of the things they talked about was online problem-solving environments, right? So every online learning experience, like a game or simulation, features problems that must be solved through critical thinking about strategies and results. Because game players take on roles, they experience, to some extent, the concrete realities that words and symbols describe, right? And they develop situated understandings based on realities of the game or online experiences. So this obviously can be controversial, as we might have seen, in terms of people saying, well, they're not actually experiencing this because they're not out there in the real world, learning how to count money or learning how to do their taxes, or, I don't know, whatever it may be. They're doing it through a simulation. But in my opinion, I think if they can still access those experiences in a classroom setting, it can really enhance their learning. And then they'll experience them, later in real life, right? So why say no to an experience that may be simulated when you can, do it in the classroom? So that's what I say to the controversy, if you will. They also talked about the role of feedback, and we know as educators, feedback is critical for learning, right? And especially for thinking critically and problem solving. Feedback lets the student know when she's moving forward in a positive direction or when she's going off track. It encourages learning from successes, right, and mistakes, which are, again, both essential ingredients of critical thinking and problem solving. Teachers can use feedback in the following ways, as the book says: tutoring systems and software, real-time chats, email, online discussion groups, blogs, student participation systems. Those are systems like Poll Everywhere, right? Where you're polling polling systems so that students can give immediate responses to questions that you ask. Tablet computers for in-class note-taking, writing, and editing, interactive educational websites, and more, right? One example of a resource that I have used for these is Turnitin.com, where Turnitin.com not only scans for plagiarism, which I think most of us know Turnitin.com for, but it also gives teachers the ability to quickly grade and provide feedback to each paper that students turn in. It also gives students the opportunity to do peer reviews on other people's papers. And receiving peer feedback in addition to instructor feedback can only benefit, really, if it's done correctly. And I have experienced a lot of success with doing peer review and peer feedback through Turnitin.com. So that is critical thinking and problem solving. Now, each of these goals or concepts, whatever you want to call them, have the tech tools sections, right, where it provides specific apps and web resources that align with the goals within each concept, right? So 3.1 gives you specific ideas for critical thinking and problem solving. Okay, quick little true or false question for you all. True or false? All information on the internet is true and accurate. Hopefully you are all sitting at your computers or iPads or, wherever you are, saying, well, duh, Kate, it's false. If you said true, however, maybe take notes on this next little part. The answer is, in fact, false. Not all of the information on the internet is true and accurate, and some definitely is, but a lot of it isn't. Or it's biased, which poses a whole other issue, right? Students are, especially this generation of students that we work with, they know how to find the information using search engines, online encyclopedias, Wikipedia, but the major gap with these students and finding information is they don't really know how to evaluate those sources. Many students believe that all the information on the internet is true, that they're going to type something into Google and the first article that comes up is the, almighty truth-knowing, answer to everything. And we know that's simply not true, right? So teaching students the skills needed to achieve all of these different literacies is critical, because they need to know how to navigate and evaluate the information out there, right? And each literacy serves its own purpose, but just briefly, information literacy includes the ability to locate, evaluate, and use information effectively. Internet literacy is applying those skills from information literacy to online information. So it's the same skills, you're just pulling the information from different sources, either physical books or, an online source. Digital media and visual literacies include skills needed to read and assess many types of online visual presentations, right? So being able to teach students these skills and how to evaluate and how to critically think about the sources and the information that they're finding is super important for them to be, digital citizens, which we will talk about in a little bit. Again, specific tools for developing these digital literacies can be found on 3.2, Tech Tool 3.2. All right, the next part is communicating and collaborating. In my opinion, I think this is probably where we see technology used the most in education, as in addition to like doing research and things like that, at least from my experience in secondary. Technologies that are used for communication and collaboration make new patterns of possibilities for classrooms in which students can work together attentively, thoughtfully, willingly on academic activity, right? So using online surveys, digital storytelling, online publishing, discussion boards, wikis, all of these different things for students to communicate and collaborate and work together on to achieve a certain learning goal, or an academic learning goal, or even a content area standard, right? So the other thing that the book briefly talks about is using technology helps increase motivation in students. I think that has to come, that must come from the excitement of using an iPad or a Chromebook or, a desktop even, or their smartphone in class. It's exciting to use technology to help facilitate learning instead of just, some kids get bored with the pen and paper. It just happens. So again, in that second bullet point, there's that term active learning again. So essentially what active learning is students are physically and cognitively involved in the learning process, personally doing something to compare and contrast ideas and information, rather than just passively sitting, listening to explanations, viewing videos, or reading about a topic. They are engaged. They are working together. They are motivated to learn something and to work and cooperate with their peers. We're actually going to use an app that, or a web resource that falls under this category at the end of this little recap. So hopefully you can use that one in your classroom. But again, more specific examples in Tech Tool 3.3. Moving right along. Expressing creativity. In my experience in secondary, I think this is the hardest one to achieve, because I feel like in secondary we get so stuck in our ways and achieving, the standard or testing or whatever it may be, that sometimes we forget about the creative side of students. However, the resources that are available to us are endless. So we have everything from word processing, desktop publishing, design tools, digital videos, digital cameras, podcasts, vodcasts. It's endless. One example that's at the bottom of your screen is called Pixon. It's a free resource where students can make graphic novels to do a variety of things, such as depicting their own personal narratives, or rewriting an ending to a book that they've just read, right? Or illustrating a story or a scene from a novel or a play. Obviously, I went to my expertise and I related it to English, but there are ways to also, touch on these things in math and science, and maybe if you can take a math equation or a theorem or whatever it may be and apply it to real life, and then they have to illustrate that. That's taking their level of understanding to way higher of a level than just being able to solve an equation, right? However, the most important thing about this with expressing creativity is that you, the teacher, need to establish conditions in which students can express their creativity. A classroom that encourages creative thinking and new ideas will, in turn, foster creativity and help students grow their creative thinking, right? So if you have a classroom that's set up very strict and routine, which I guess is fine, but you're then asking for them to do something creative, they're going to struggle with it. It's going to be difficult because they're so used to this way of operating in your room. So you need to make sure that you are fostering an environment that calls for and encourages creativity. So the last one, digital citizenship. I'm just going to fly through this one because I think we touched on it a little bit on Monday, but essentially digital citizenship is the attitudes and skills needed to use technology creatively, effectively, and appropriately in today's society. Ways that we as educators can hope to, create good digital citizens in our students are teaching them about things like plagiarism, right? Cyberbullying, the moral ethics of using online resources, etc., etc. A lot of these skills are taught through outside experiences, but we as teachers can provide them with positive learning opportunities in the classroom, and then, obviously hope they have positive learning positive learning opportunities when they leave, our realm. But if they have a negative opportunity, creating that classroom environment, again, just like the expressing creativity, creating an environment where they can talk about those experiences, those negative experiences, and why they were negative, and why how we can make a change if possible. So those are the 5 ways to create a unique, powerful, transformative learning environment using technology. Okay, so to briefly recap, there they are: thinking critically and problem solving, developing new literacies, communicating and collaborating, expressing creativity, and building digital citizens. Now, last thought before I show you this cool new app, these 5 concepts overlap with each other. If you haven't noticed, or if you didn't notice while you were reading, especially if you're looking at the applications and web resources they give in each respective, tech tools box that I talked about, some of them, work for creativity and problem solving and critical thinking, or digital citizenship and communication and collaboration. And I think that's kind of the point. They're supposed to bleed over, and they're supposed to interact and communicate with one another. I feel like it's very similar to the TPAC model, where you had those 3 ideas, right? I think like teaching, like your pedagogy, the content, and the students, I think it was, right? Oh geez, correct me if I'm wrong. But the 3 of them can't function if one of them is out, if you can't focus on one of them, or if you can't connect one of them. So it's a similar idea. You can have one of these 5 without, the other 4. They're naturally in sync with one another, and they share the same goal: to create a unique, powerful, and transformative learning experience for every student through technology use. So before I show you the cool trick, or the cool site rather, here are the sources that I've used in this presentation so far. So I have Google Slides, which is how I'm using this presentation. Slide Carnival is a really cool online free resource where you can download themes. So I don't know if you've noticed, but this theme is not typical for Google. So someone actually created this theme, made it into a Google Slide template, put it on Slide Carnival, and now it's free for anyone to use. So it'll download into your drive. It's really, really fun. And they have different categories like educational or inspirational or creative or whatever. Again, QuickTime Player, I'm using screen recording and audio recording to present this information to you all. And then the last thing that I'm going to jump over to now is called Flipgrid. Now, you are all very smart, intelligent people, so I have the utmost faith that you are able to figure out how to use Flipgrid on your own. But I just want to point out a couple really cool features. So let's see if I can get out of this real quick. Wow, it did that pretty fast. Okay, so I provided you with a link that for you looks like this. If you click on it, you're going to see learning with new technologies, cool cover photo. You've got some discussion questions down here. I'm going to show you what it looks like on the other side. So this is the home page for Flipgrid. I've already created an account, so I'm going to go ahead and I would click login, but I just have a tab open right here that I'm going to click instead. So boom, here is my grid. It's called a grid, okay? Learning with new technologies. I have a grid code, so if I wanted to, if we had a classroom hooked up to the Flipgrid site, this is the code I would give them. But since we're just using this as free users, this was the link that you all clicked onto. So I have 6 discussion topics. These are the questions that I'm going to ask that you play around with and you answer them. You do need access to a video camera. If you don't have one, no worries. This isn't required by Dr. Albert. I just think if you use it, then you might be able to fall in love with it like I kind of have. So just to show you how this works, for you this is what you're seeing. I would just want you to click on a discussion question. You'll see how easy this is. Add a response, and this is, check my hair real quick. Don't look like So, a video response is required to answer these, okay, there we go, hello, is required to answer these kinds of questions, right? So in order to respond to this discussion question, which is right up there on the right, how will you go about teaching and or promoting creativity? You go down to this big red button, hit click, counts you down, which is nice, and you record your answer. And you sit there and you record. It gives you the countdown. When you're done, you hit pause. Okay? If you're like, oh wait, I need to add something else, you can hit the red button again. Or if you're like, oh, yikes, that was bad, go ahead and delete it. Then you hit next. And you record. Yeah. It'll play it back for you. Okay? Again, if you're like, yikes, that was really bad. That's a good picture of me. Oh God, what's going on? If you're like, that was horrible, I need to do it again. Trash it, total garbage, re-record it. Then you hit next. It's going to ask to snap a selfie because this is what's going to pop up. So here we go, snapping a selfie. Oh, that was pretty bad. I'll do a better one. There we go. It was pretty horrible. All right, here we go. So you have a picture, you're cool with it, you hit next. It's going to upload super fast. Now, if I were in a classroom, I would have everybody put their last name as just A to protect their privacy and their, their identities. But since, we're all adults here, you can put your last name. I don't even know. I think you have to put a last name. Let's see. Yeah. So we'll just put A for right now. Submit my video. Boom. Success. And there it is. So if we go back to discussion question number 6, there it is. There's my response. Now, as each of you record a response, it'll pop up your little selfies that you took. So the idea behind using Flipgrid is to create a discussion base for students where maybe where you're not in class necessarily. Or if you're having different discussions, you can engage in different discussions without having to take up the whole class or, trying to rotate like a workstation or a learning station. The other idea, this can really work for a flipped classroom as well. You can do like what I'm doing where I'm recording a video and then asking them to go on to Flipgrid and respond to some discussion questions about that video, right? And then they can listen to other people. And the idea behind recording yourself, you're putting a face to that response. It's not just typing out a blog post. It's actually being able to verbalize what you're saying. The cool thing about this too is it helps students that have a disability or English language learners. So if I want to go in and watch this, I hope it doesn't play right away. Oh, it will. If I want to go in and watch this right away, down here it says transcription. It'll transcribe that, I didn't say much, but it'll transcribe that response so that if you have a student who is an English language learner, they can listen and read and make those connections. And it'll help them learn the language. So this is my response. It'd be cool to just do the discussion questions through here. I will be checking this periodically through until Monday. I have it set up that every time there's a new response, it sends me an email. So I got an email about 3 minutes ago when I posted that last one, saying that somebody responded to it. So hopefully this works. If not, you can go ahead and post your discussion question answers on the Blackboard blog. But other than that, there it is, Chapter 3, Flipgrid, the intro to Dabs and Howard. And that's it.